First of all, I'm not sure whether this is the session where everyone has regained their energy. I think it's quite to the contrary, because we got the more difficult shift, which is after lunch, the infamous after lunch session. So we have made this session very relaxed, very open. So you guys have gone through a panel discussion, etc. earlier today. So part of the AWANI AI Roundtable is this, which is the actual roundtable. So as you can see, there are no set speakers, there are no set itineraries. We open the floor to everyone because we've gathered everyone from across different fields because we want to hear from everyone. In fact, my goal is to speak as little as possible because it's not about me. So, but we do have rough topics which are in line with what was discussed earlier today or throughout today. And for this roundtable, we want to focus on AI, journalism, and Gen Z. So a world in flux now is what we call it, journalism, AI, and Gen Z's role in reimagining media. We have political instability, we have polarization, we have misinformation. All this is creating chaos. AI is actually exacerbating some of this, and throw into the mix Gen Z as the largest emerging news audience and digital native storytellers. They have a unique role in reshaping newsroom workflows, storytelling approaches, as well as engagement models. So we want to hear from everyone today as to how, not just how AI is transforming journalism, but how can we use or maximize AI to fit to a new audience in the new world. So it's basically open concept, but I want to call upon maybe one or two individuals here who are regulars to kind of get the ball rolling, because I've been told that sometimes Gen Z, especially after lunch, diorang ni macam slow sikit, they're a bit sleepy, so maybe they don't want to speak first, they want someone else to speak first. So can I just call upon Prof. Zaharom? Prof. Zaharom, we'll start with you. Of course, you're the godfather of AI in Malaysia. So Prof, we've often talked about how AI is transforming journalism, right? But now throwing in Gen Z into the mix, their content consumption patterns, their preferences, etc., how has throwing that into the balance or throwing that into the equation spiced things up?
I really don't know, actually, because there's been no studies on Gen Z in that sense. As far as journalism is concerned and AI, the studies that we've been doing with Reuters, I do the Malaysian study, indicates that many audiences are essentially not reading, not reading the news, as it were, right? They're looking for other avenues, if at all. There's news avoidance. That's the term that's being used now, right? So either they totally are pissed off with the news, and this is not just Malaysia, but other countries as well. So that's the situation right now. And, you know, of course, newspapers and all, they're facing tremendous problems, right? In terms of the economics of it all, right? Circulations are down. And therefore, there is that major problem there. Now, as far as, can I just say, based on the conversations we had this morning, and me being a spoiler, there seems to be a kind of guarded, if not wild optimism for the potential of AI in academia as well. I mean, I heard a few academics here. And I've been in the business for many decades now. I remember coming back in the 80s, and one of the main first papers that I presented was a critique of the communications curriculum in Malaysia in many universities. The emphasis on skills, so-called skills, taught by unskilled lecturers who had many of whom in USM where I was, had no experience whatsoever in the media, right? So, and I have listened to some of the comments today with academia. It seemed to be like I was going back to the 1980s. Yeah, there is this almost an obsession with the potential of AI there, right? I think it's very dangerous when we think in those kind of sense, and when we talk about, you know, a 200-page dissertation to be cut down to 7 seconds, for example, right? There are a lot of things in this world that you cannot explain in 7 seconds. The problems in this world, how do you explain poverty? How do you explain inequality? In the context of Malaysia, how do you explain race relations, for example, right? And the links with for example, RM13, Rancangan Malaysia ke-13, right? Those are issues that are outside the so-called media realm, as it were, right? Journalism, as it were, in terms of what is being taught. But I think this wider social problems has to be at the core of any sort of curriculum, especially curriculum on journalism, because a curriculum on journalism is about knowing more about the world and trying to essentially educate people around the world, including especially Gen Z, right, who many feel are not bothering to look at that. But once you start looking away from all that, escaping, as it were, right, then the real problems that we face will not be addressed, let alone resolved. And I think journalists play a crucial role as far as trying to make the whole world understand what problems there are there. And we are not a country that doesn't have problems. We are a country that has problems. The world has problems now, right? How do you explain Trump, for example, and the rise of Trump, and the impact of Trump on the rest of the world, right? So these are things you cannot just ignore, right? Fine, I love to, you know, like my children love perhaps K-pop and not. Do they love K-pop?
My kids love that. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but there is something else that they must go into, right? And it's not about, I think the question shouldn't be, for an academic, shouldn't be what can we do for the industry, right? I think the question should be, how can we improve industry and improve society at the same time, right? And I think that's crucial as academics, and that's my kind of pedagogic ideology, is it? Philosophy. Right? I come from the old school, being a boomer, like I said, right? So, so certain things you just cannot, you know, cut down into 41. What was it? 141. Yeah, stuff. You just cannot. I mean, if you look at the history of the death of the documentary in US, for example, that's precisely what happened, right? And because of that, I think we lost quite a lot of things, yeah? The world lost a lot of things when documentaries that look deeper into issues are cut down into magazine formats, yeah? Or even quick news bites. So anyway, that's my kind of spiel, and I think I better stop there. Okay, thanks.
I personally love documentaries. I just watch so many documentaries on YouTube, but I think that is I think that shows who I am, because I think, not to toot our own horn, but people our age, our generation, we're like kind of in the middle. We are the only generation that lived before the internet and after the internet, before social media, after social media. So we're kind of in the middle. So we have a very unique perspective, pre and post internet, pre and post AI, how life was and how life now is. I mean, those days whenever we want to connect to the internet, it's 56K dial up, right? So that's very interesting. But I would like to carry that forward. What Prof. Zaharom said about shorter attention spans, which present now challenges for newsmakers to tell the whole story comprehensively and fairly. Can we just have a quick show of hands? Who's Gen Z here? Okay, can I get from one of you a response? Because we keep telling ourselves here in the newsroom that, okay, we have to adapt to the audience outside. Gen Zs now, they like compact content, they have shorter attention spans, which is not necessarily a critique, though, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but that's just how the world is changing. But at the same time, you rationalize that with what Prof. Zaharom said. How can you explain poverty in 7 seconds? How can you explain even Gaza in 7 seconds? And at the same time, you young people have short attention spans, and that's what you demand. So how do you rationalize both of that? Anyone from Gen Z can answer?
Yeah, we have a representative already. Right.
Go ahead, representative.
Could you repeat the question in one sentence?
So,
short attention span.
Hold on, I'm getting ChatGPT to summarize my question. How do you rationalize two things? One, Gen Zs have short attention spans, and two, you can't tell each and every news story, fairly in 7 seconds.
So, for me, there's two extremes, actually. I do enjoy my short content a lot. Funny, because I don't have TikTok. I did not install TikTok at all. I only have Instagram and YouTube. So, I have on this one side my short content, and on one side I have my 2-hour documentaries, my ARGs, my lores, deep dives into rabbit holes. The 3 a.m. deep dive into Wikipedia is real. Nothing good happens after 3 a.m., but for me, it's always Wikipedia. So how I rationalize this is Gen Zers, we are really passionate about stuff, and I feel like that's why we have shorter attention spans as well. When we are passionate about something, we dive deep into it. We dive so deep into it. There's a sense of obsession with a sort of like topic that we are interested in. So in terms of journalistic content, we have to look at what topics they are passionate about, and we have to adapt to basically what they want to see. And sometimes at the forefront, we have to bring up topics that are really important as well as like the war that is happening around the world as well, and how society is adapting to AI in terms of journalistic content. And I feel like in newsrooms, when AI gets brought in, there's a sense of like, there's deepfakes, and there's a lot of generated content that we can't really verify whether it's real or not. So as journalists on the front lines, we have the sense of responsibility to make sure that the content we put out is verified and we see where the source is. So as a Gen Zer, I feel like you say that you're the middle bridge, but I feel like we're kind of in the middle as well, because there's the upcoming generation, Generation Alpha, which is much, much more proficient in AI. They were brought up on tablets, we have iPad kids, and there's much more brain rot content that they are used to in a way, and they have less critical thinking compared to Gen Zers who maybe potentially experience the era before AI was here. Because for our generation, I think AI was pretty prevalent in the COVID and pandemic era, where we were going through SPM or higher tier education. We were progressing. So AI really came during our tertiary education.
Thanks. That's an interesting point. I would like to go to Dr. Shazana, UiTM Melaka, because I was just having a chat with her before we started. And what she said was exactly the same as you. She said that the problem now with AI is that students are becoming lazy. And I just saw maybe a few weeks ago, there was a study, I can't remember the details of it, but it had a graph of since 2022 when ChatGPT burst into the scene, or how it has deteriorated people's brains, literally, because we outsource our thinking now to ChatGPT. We just don't think anymore. And I'm sometimes guilty of doing that myself. So, Doctor, can you just lend your experience as to how AI has made people lazy and just not thinking?
Okay. Actually, not only UiTM student, I think all students, Universiti Melaya, Unit 10, and all students actually nowadays, our new generation actually, very, very different with our time before this, right? So any assignment, anything that we give to them, in 5 minutes they will use ChatGPT. Actually, we can see that this is from ChatGPT because they forgot to delete from ChatGPT. We can detect this is from ChatGPT. Okay, so actually, what we can say, because we as academician also we use ChatGPT, but we use in our what we call the function we use if we go to our banker workshop, that they train us if want to do this one like this. Not only just you put or you give ChatGPT, I want this one, and then the answer, then you just use it. Actually, have a lot of steps. You want to use ChatGPT that it will more help you actually, and will protect your data actually. So our student actually, we don't call them lazy, okay? But they use because of this one easy. But we as a lecturer, academician, what's next? If like this, okay? Let's one day they become a minister, if related to something about the economy or what, So how? If they, we will they use, oh, this one, how to do with this one with the economy. So we don't want like that. Okay, so that's why the future of AI, the future of ChatGPT, what can make the student after this, the future, how they can think without ChatGPT itself, can?
That's interesting. I'll relate that to journalism in just a few seconds, but I just want to share one point. During my time in university, the problem was Wikipedia. And lecturers at that time really were not satisfied with the fact that we use Wikipedia. But we students protested and said, how is that different from you guys back in your day using books? You used to go to the library, you cite books in your paper or thesis, whatever it is, or assignment. And now we can do it much quicker, much more easily, as long as you cross-check the sources, etc. So now the next round is ChatGPT. So people like us are complaining, including me, saying that, okay, now there's an even faster way of getting information. But if I want to totally be against it, even if I'm a lecturer, I have to remember that back in the day, I also used the internet. I also used Wikipedia. So this is like the new version of Wikipedia. So can I just get someone, maybe from the academic community, your thoughts on this? How far can you use ChatGPT? And do you think it will deteriorate critical thinking? Because this is what we've been saying since 15 years ago, since I was using Wikipedia.
Can I have a say? Yeah. Hi dear, my name is Lina. I'm also from academic perspective. I was actually from ITM, then USM, and now I'm UM from the digital perspective on digital marketing side, which I taught in that subject. Perhaps I can just give a note that we actually use ChatGPT. What we use is the flipped classroom. We challenge. I think the niche area here is to prompt, how you prompt. Those days, back in my generation with Prof. Rom, was my lecturer, back in USM. Prof, I got grade B tau. Touchy tau. B baik. Kalau B plus or A minus lagi baik. Okay, just selingan. Okay, back to the prompt. Those days, during my time, we went to a library. This prompt is just similar to indexing. When back in the library time, when we search, I bet if you talk to our young generation, Gen Z, you might not know about indexing. Back in the library, we search the keywords, but now the keywords is like Google search, you search keywords. And then back to ChatGPT, I think now we challenge how you prompt. Just not as simple as what summarized in 144 characters of the abstract, blah, 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 from your thesis. But actually how you deep dive on giving a prompt, a proper prompt. Let's say for a rubric for digital marketing, I have 100%, but how do you prompt it? You know, particularly on, I want 20% for presentation, I want 20% on the content, 20% on the formatting, and grammatically, and then after that, what? That will concise. And then I think now the challenge here, people want to keep simple, right? So to answer your questions, prompt is a big challenge now. Even though that you are from the baby boomers or from the 50s or Gen X and Y, you don't know how to prompt. So this is what we've been teaching the digital marketer, how to prompt correctly, rather than just keep simplified the things, and ChatGPT would not deep dive and giving you the proper answer. I think Prof. Yun also on the AI perspective on how do you do HTML and whatnot. I think she's more on that data coding, right? So yeah, I think I let the floor rule on this matter. Yeah.
So, okay. So I was reading this article from two researchers from Princeton. I think they wrote a book called AI and Snake Oil or something like that. The article was talking about AI and science. Will AI progress allow for progress in science, or will it pull us back? Right? It's a very long one. I really encourage you guys to look at it. It talks about this thing called the production progress paradox, which is the more you produce, progress actually slows down. It was talking about how maybe AI can can make individual researchers more productive, but science as a field actually slows down. Why? Because there's just too much information for people to actually digest. Because of how we cite papers, those papers that get cited the most actually are there's a power curve basically, right? So researchers are more taking less risks, so having less breakthroughs in science. So why am I saying all of this? Inside of the article, there's one point that stood out to me, which is what is the point of science, right? When it comes to it. The point of science really is to forward human understanding in whatever field it is. So I think our conversation needs to have this nuance. So it's not like, is AI good, is AI bad? Likely is like what our Gen Z friend there says. There's two sides to the story. There's like nuance in between. Sometimes I prefer short form. Sometimes I prefer long form, right? So there's a lot of nuance on whether AI can help us with our understanding of how the world works, or it will impede our understanding of how the world works. So I think that if we can focus on this part on understanding, we'll get a little bit more insight towards this conversation on how AI is affecting the education and research and science for the younger people. So it really depends on how they use it. So read the article is what I'm saying. Thanks.
Thanks, Doctor. Prof?
All right. I think I will just take the input here and there a little bit. So let's start with the short attention span. So this is not just for Gen Z, I think even for probably everyone, because of the massive amount of information that we're now having, and there's so little capacity that our brain can handle at a time. Okay, it used to be, I happen to know a little bit about how the brain works. So we used to be able to keep between 5 to 7-9 information at a time. Back in the 50s, this was the discovery. And now it has dropped to 4, which translates to our ability to pay attention is about 8 seconds now, which is less than goldfish, which is about 12 seconds. So it is a little bit controversial. Of course, you can say that, well, not quite, because if you're interested in a specific piece of information or video, then of course you can pay longer attention, true enough. So I think this is where we come in and play around with our human capability, how much we can cope, consistent with our interests and the kinds of information that we want to kind of like direct people to gain. So in the context of journalism, what I can think, and of course, like what Lina is saying, is prompt engineering is so critical. It's not just for technical people. It's not just for people who are developing algorithms or products or services that need to know prompt engineering very well. In fact, I would argue that it is a necessity skills these days, because almost everyone, this is the go-to way of looking for information. So I think this is a mindset that we need to cultivate from a very young age in terms of how do you look for information, and information that is kind of like validated, something that is reliable enough, and to do prompt engineering in such a way that it is actually positive for one's development. So it's not just using the input to get an output, simply just an output, but it is an output that matters to our development in terms of how we develop our critical thinking. So if I can relate to how we're trying to divert from traditional way of teaching and learning, I think one of the ways can be, instead of getting an output from the students, one way is to get them to explain how they reach to the output. So it's more like the process of developing the problem-solving skills rather than right? This is the input. This is my end product, my thesis, my article, whatever it is. Because I feel that we were talking during the break. One of the key skills in developing our communication skills, or what do you call that? Soft skills in general, is being able to adapt. So this is one thing that I feel is missing these days in maybe somewhere along the pipeline of teaching learning from a very young age because of our current education system, which needs to change, of course. Because it's very hard to get an adult to start thinking about how to adapt. Of course, it's easier, but if it's a learning strategy that we cultivate from a young age, it is a lot easier for you, regardless of course, our curriculum will change. What we teach now, the impact, the students will graduate 4 years from now. And the question is it valid for them to use the skills that they learn now, because it's 4 years' time, definitely there will be a new technology, right? So the question is, can we mold them in such a way that they have an ability to keep on changing themselves, adapting, like, okay, this is a new problem, I've never seen this problem, but I have some skills to kind of like investigate how this problem looks based on my similar experience or something like that. And this is something that will eventually lead them to being somebody who can, again, relating to what I think we talk about, is being able to innovate, right? So it's all relating to the end product, which is eventually giving the current users short kind of like information in a short amount of duration, but again, being accessible to longer piece of information in other forms of format. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. I think you nailed it on the head, because I think the concern is not about how AI will change things, or how we should best use AI, but the question, or the concern rather, is whether AI is indeed resulting or will exacerbate a problem of short attention spans, will deteriorate our brains, and will eventually just make the human race less competent because we are too dependent on technology. I think that's a big picture here.
This is part 1 of the AWANI AI Roundtable. Part 2 will air next week on It's About Youth. This is an edited version of the Roundtable. Responses have been abridged for broadcast purposes.